the very first function that we have discussed is use of print function, and within print you can type anything, integer value or print with decimal value or floating point number. The third one is a string, right? For example, something like this, which will print whatever you put in double quotes. Similarly, you can use single quotes as well. This is also possible, right? Both works. So if you want to have like one line string, you want to print, use either double quotes or single quotes. Then if you want to have, the question of why you have to use double quotes or single quotes, sometimes these quotes are part of the string. Like for example, I can have print, right, it's me. Now for example, here you have a single quote there, so if you try to put single quotes, then it will provide you an error, right? So this was what I referring in the quiz. So single quotes will give you an error, because if you are using a single quote, Python interpreter confuses with where to end this one, right? So that's exactly what will happen. There are two solutions. One is if you are having a single quote, then use double quotes. That is the easiest way to solve this one. Second one is you can use escape characters. So if you have this, right, and if you want to indicate that this is a part of the string, you can escape it, which will correct the problem, right? So these are the things that we have discussed. So in the question, we had two double quotes, Python, two double quotes, right? So which will give you an error. If you want to print double quotes, so the first one should be a single quote. If you have a single quote, within the single quote you can have double quotes like this. The second one is you can escape, which means let's say you have double quotes like this, you can put a slash here, that you just ignore this one. Similarly, the end is also ignored, and the final end we can have this. So in that particular case also we are getting the same answer, right? I think this is exactly what we have discussed last time. Now let me share my slides. Right, okay. Now last time we discussed couple of things, the expectation of the program and what you will get, and also the content of the program, and then I introduced the software tools I am planning to use, the references. So these are the main things that we have discussed in the very beginning, and after that we went into details. We discussed why Python is so popular nowadays, and it's a top programming language for this month in Tube Index. And then this is how the three popular programming languages actually evolve over the years, and then you will see that Python is getting the top, right? And once you learn Python, you can do web development, game development, app development, data analytics, embedded system programming, anything you want you can do with Python. And then I have also listed some of the libraries and some useful resources. The very first thing that we have discussed is use of two modes, interactive mode and script mode. So interactive mode, we can just type. If you go to idle, you open the idle. So like I did, you just type it. Second one is you write a separate script. You can say file new, right? And then here you can type whatever the commands, and then you can save it as a separate file, and then you can execute. So these are the two things that we have discussed last time. Now for example, the very first program that we have written is print hello world, and how we did it, we saved it, and when you are saving, right, let me say program 1, right, you save it, and once you save, then you can run. So when you run it, notice this is the shell, the output will be shown in the shell. So when you say run module, right, you see the outcome comes here, right. So that's how we could start. The next thing that we have discussed is about the getting help. So we also discuss a function called help, and then we discuss the little constants like how numbers are represented, how strings are represented. This is the discussion we had, and then we use of type function will provide us the type of the object. For example, if you say type 508, it says int, but if you type 508.0, it will say okay, string. Okay, right. And then we discuss the strings, use of single quotes and double quotes, and also like including single quote or double quotes in your message. Then we went to discuss variables, variable namings, and then also like some of these keyboards which defines under Python programming you cannot use elsewhere, right. Then we were discussing about the arithmetic operators. These are the set that you should know, and the operator precedence, because I told you in computing usually we solve from left to right. And also I have given some things to work on. Okay, this is a place where we have stopped last time, that is any operations on string. So generally you cannot have any arithmetic operations performed on strings, but these use a special name. Now for example, when you have two strings like this, and if you use plus symbol, it means you are going to merge, which we call string concatenation, right. Then we have fun. You multiply with the integer, it will repeat this message exactly 3 times. We have repetition here. Okay, this is the place where we have stopped last time. So let's start today's discussion. So today the first thing that we are going to discuss is type converter functions. Type converter means now we know there are 3 data types, right. So what are the 3 data types? So what we have discussed so far is we can have integer values, like if you say type, right, when you say type, right, when you say type, let's say integer value like a whole number, it says int. If you have like the decimal point, it says float, and if it is, let's say Python, right, it's a string. Now there's another set of functions are available that you can actually convert among these different data types, which means now given this one we have a decimal point, we need to get the integer value of it, which we call type converter functions. Right. So let's start the first one. So I will take the shell again. Maybe I can reduce the size so that it's visible for you. Right. Let me comes here. Right. Now here is my. Right. I hope you can see both the screens. Right. Now, for example, when you say 3.14. It's a floating point number that you already know because you have a decimal point. But if you say int 3.14, yes, it will give you only the integer part of it. Now it even could be something like this, it doesn't matter, right? You can have this, but still it gives you 3 because there's no rounding off, only the integer part of it, right? So this is also works. 1 2 3 4, it's working, but this is not going to work. You cannot mix. If you say 23 bottles, you are trying to mix integers with the strings, which we will get an error, right? Now similarly, you can convert to float as well. Command is float. If you say 17, you get 17.0. Right? So you can try the others, try to understand how you may convert among these different data files, and hopefully we will discuss at the very end how we can do this. So any questions from type converter functions? And those who have finished, can you please raise your hands as well, so that I know that you have completed this part. Right, that's great. There are some more to come, but I think you got the point. If you have done this in other programming language also, you will see there are similar functionalities there as well, but just take a note of here in Python. Right, okay, thanks. You can lower the hands. Okay, my main focus for today, actually I plan to discuss input and output, which means for a program we need sometimes provide input, and based on the input we expect some output, and output in a formatted way. So those are the three things that I'm going to discuss now. So let's start. First of all, we have to use input function if you want to get something from the user, right? If you want to get something from the user, use input. So let me show you, right? Just use like input. Now if you just type input, what will happen? You see, now this one is a prompt, and we type some Python statement here, and I'm going to press enter, and you will not notice that the cursor blinks, which means it's expect me to enter something, right? So let me type something. Right, I type Python and you get it as a output as Python as well, with a single quote, which indicates that it's a string value. So which means, right, if you just use it, user doesn't know what to enter. Now to improve this, I can say, okay, something like this. I can say, okay, enter your name. Okay, now this time the improvement is whatever you entered within the input, within the brackets, it will display to the user. Now user know what to type, right? So maybe I can type my name, okay, and you will get it. Now you know that these values that we are trying to get, we need to further use in our program. So better to store. So let's have an assignment. So I can say something like this. Okay, we can say input, okay, enter your name. So simply whatever user enters, I'm going to store in n, right? So if I enter, so let me put some path this time, no output, but if you say print in, it will say some path, and type in, it will say it's a string value. Right, any questions up to this point? Are you comfortable of getting input from the user? Right, now there are some problems, remember? Now let's say if I want to take a number, then if whatever the number I enter, take it as a string value, which is not a good thing. So we need to convert this string to a number. So that's why we discussed previous one. converter functions, where we discussed already, right? You can convert in between, right, different data types. So you can use int, float, and string. Okay, now having said that, right, I would like to go back, and I just want to get not a name, I want to get a number, right? So right now, if you just use like this, n equals input enter number, and whatever user enters, let's say 5, yes, and if you say print in, you will not see anything. But if you say like type in, it will say that okay, this is string value. You know what the problem is, the string value. You cannot add, for example, if you add 10 plus 20, you will get 1020, 1020. Right? But this is different. When you say print n, you will get 5, and still my type is string. So we need to convert a function. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get this again, and within that I will put int. So the outcome is whenever user enters something, it will take it as a string, and then you convert into a number. So if you, for example, if you press 5, so we know that print n will print 5, type n will tell us that it's an integer value. Right, if you finish up to this point and if you are clear, no questions, you may raise your hands. If you are comfortable with getting inputs and printing it back in the terminal, then you can raise your hands. Adisha, what about you? Having any issues? Are you okay?
Yeah, okay.
Ajay?
Yeah, okay.
Buddhika? How about Buddhini? Dulshan? Yep. Lavisha? Okay, thanks everyone. You can lower the hands. I hope everyone is clear about the input function. Now what you need to remember is input function, whatever user enters, take as a string value. In case if you want to take a number, you have to use type converter functions, right? Now this one, if I change it to float, right, this is what will happen. Then number is stored as a floating point number, right? Now for example, if I put 5 here, and if you say print n, you will get 5.0, because number is represented as a floating point number. So depend on your requirement, you can convert it to an integer and convert it into a floating point number. It's up to you. Okay, right. Then let's move to the next one, the outputs. Now we know how to get the input. Let's look at the output. Right. Now simply we know that print will give you the output. If you want to print multiple objects, you can comma separate. Right. Okay. Then let me discuss there are various ways that you can present the output, right? There are many ways to present the outcome. So let me briefly discuss this. Right, okay, so let me take this idle session. Okay, we have this. Let's say we have two variables. We can have a equals 28. We can have b equals 15. So this is most basic way. But if you want, you can comma separate, like a equals 28, comma b equals 15. Right. So the mistake I made here is there are two ways that we can actually represent a equals 28 and b equals 15. Python can do this for one line, like a comma b equals 28 comma 15. So this is exactly what I want to discuss. So either you can have two lines separately for a and b, otherwise one single statement, and then you can assign two different values, right? So all this possible in Python. Right, now my actual intention here is to discuss the output. Now we have a is 28, b is 15. So you can simply say print a will give you 28, print a comma b. If you remember, last time we discussed, right, you can separate the values. Yes, we are getting 28 and 15. And the next one we discuss, if you want to separate this, you can decide a, b. Right, then we can have separation. If you remember from the last time, now default value between the two different values is a space, but if you want to change this, you can use it like this, which means it will comma separate the numbers. Okay, so that's about the simple printing. But there's another one as well. For the same thing, I can do something like this. I can say print, we can have a plus single quote, comma, plus let's say b. Right. So the question here is, I put a plus right, so we have comma plus and b, because to make the addition, so these are the numbers, you have to convert into string values, right? So this addition is string value converted. So we have to perform string, convert to a string. You can say strp. So because it's a string value. So that's what we have seen here. If you need a blank, like without anything, you can open and close bracket like this, which will give you one space. Right, so that's about simple outputs. The second one is, right, so for example here, in mathematics, so we have formatted output using percentage operator, and And then there are some things that we need to know when you are displaying a number. Sometimes you have to, train. In this case, we will have a number with 5 decimal places, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So when you say print A, it will print everything. The second one actually we will get as a decimal value. Right, so let's start. So in this one there are like about 3 ways that you can print with Python, right? Especially when you want to create some interfaces, textual interfaces, let's say. You should have a good understanding of what we discuss here, right? One thing, let me take the idle. Right, okay. So here is what we are going to do. We know A is this number. Some number, you can have arbitrary long number. So this is A. So if you say print A, yes, you will get the whole number as it is. But let's say I don't want this decimal part of it. I need only the integer part of it. So we can do like this. Take a look at this. I'm going to say print and then some formatting string. I will explain what those are. Then this is string module operator, and then you will say A, right? So that's the syntax. And then syntax, we have to specify what kind of outcome you expect. If you expect an integer, put D. If you expect a floating point number, put F. Scientific notation, A. Right. Now let's see. Now simply you can say something like this, which indicates that I'm expecting a decimal, meaning a number without any decimal point, right? Whole numbers or integer values, right? If you're expecting is a floating point, just put F. We'll get a floating point. If you need it as a string, put S. Right? Put it as a S. No changes. Right. Then you can specify number of decimal places. Now for example, let me take F. I can say, okay, I need 2 decimal places like this. Or we can say, okay, I need 3 decimal places. After point, if you specify number, that will be a number of decimal points you are going to have. Then finally, you can have spacing. Like here, I'm going to put 7. Now here 7 means 7 places I'm going to allocate. So let's count from the beginning. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right. So we can take, for example, 12 if you want. Now you will have 12 points. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right. And similarly, we can, let's say, put 7.2. So you will get something like this. Any questions up to this point? Please. Right, okay. Shall we move to the next one then? Right, now we can combine this. Right, with some text value. Now for example, let's say this is some price. So I can modify this one. I can say, okay, price rupees, and then we can have this formatting. We can say 7.2f, right? Then we can say a, right? So we will have something called price rupees 1234.47. Let's say I want to have like multiple values. Here is what we can do. Let's say I want to get the same number but with two different values. Let's say the first one I want to have 2 decimal places, and second one I'm going to have 1 decimal place. Right, now you remember, since we have 2, we have to provide 2 inputs. So we will put 2 input like this. I will explain why we are getting something like this. So you see here the same number. Here it will actually allocate 2 decimal points. So here 1 decimal point. Right, okay. And one thing, when you have multiple values, you need to use round brackets. Right, if you have finished up to this point, can you please raise your hands? Right. Others? Buddhika, Asanka, Dulshan, finished? Okay, now you can lower the hands. Thanks. Let me talk about another way of representing the output. So this time we are going to discuss the second method. First method, use of modulo operator. Yes, next one you can use format. Right. The second one is we call use of format function. Right. And then let me start like this. So here is how we are going to do. So in this one, right, we are using slightly different way. So we can say print right. So here is how it works. So we have normally used these curly brackets. A curly bracket indicate different data structure, which I will discuss later on. But for the time being, there are some keys and values. Right? Key is an index. Now in Python, index start with 0. So in my case, I'm going to have 0. And then the formatting. So I'm going to put 7.2f, which indicates that I need to have 7 characters, and out of that 2 fractional values. Right. Okay, so this is the first step. So what I said was the first value, that's why I put 0 there, is 7.2f. That is the very same thing that we have discussed earlier. We specify number of characters, and after dot we specify number of decimal places. Right. And then out of this we can say format, then we will have it. So this is a complete program which will give the value like this. Right. Okay. Now if you have two values, this is how it will be different. We can say print, we'll have first value, let's say 0 to 7.2 f, and right, so we can have something like this. We can have and 1, that means the second value we are going to round it to 4. That formula we can specify here. So we can have f. So here also you have to have curly brackets. Right. Right, I'll put the bracket. So I think I made a mistake somewhere. So we have to use format, and we have to specify what the input and output values are. Right. So here is how we are getting the answers. Okay. Right. I hope now we have learned two ways of doing this. First one using string module operator. Right. Second one using the format method. So here what we see is you are applying format method to whatever the values that remaining. Right. Okay. There's another way that you can actually do. Everything is I included in the handout, so you don't have to really worry about this. Right. This is third one is the newest one in Python. Right. And this string we will call f strings. We use the formatting like we did earlier, but there are slight changes. Instead of index, now you can use variable name. Right. So here what you see is, okay, so the formatting, we have to have 7 places and 2 decimal points, and we have to use f string. So let me show you. Now if I take this one, right, so I can simply say something like this: print, we have f string. So this is the very basic format. So you just type it like this, right? Nothing is there. Then you can print whatever the values. So how do you put? We have f, and within that we will say some formatting, like let's say a. You can type like this. Yes, no problem. Now let's say a, I need it in floating point number, so we can just say f is a floating point number. But let's say I want to have 2 decimal places. Yes, that's also possible. So the total digits you can specify with the number. So this is the complete one. Okay. So I hope now you got the idea. So this is the latest version. We say normally Pythonian way of print something. If you need like two different things, right, you can simply type like this. So I hope you remember this method that we have used earlier. So if you want to print the same, right, so we can say print, it's a F string, and what you're going to have here is, right, the two values with two decimal places. So we can have a bracket, curly bracket A, that is the variable, formatting is 7.2F, and we can have bracket again B, let's say 7.1F. So this is what we are getting. So make a note of this one. So this is the latest way of printing, right? Use of F strings. Okay, now that we have learned input and output, now we are ready to implement a small problem, right? But I want you to indicate whether you have finished up to this point. So please raise your hands. I'm waiting. So I want you to right. So both is there, right? And if you're finished up to this point, can you please raise your hands so that I know you have finished? Right now, Pranavan, Darshita, Chintaka, Dulshan. Okay, right, majority has done. Okay, good. You can lower the hands. Okay, I will give you now a small program to implement, and I would like to see how you are going to do this. Right, now here is what I am going to do. So I want you to write a Python program to do this, right? So the two different colors are just to show you like what user inputs are. Whenever we want to indicate input, and the output I have used light green color. So here the first name, it should ask, the program should ask first name, then we enter some first name, and last name you enter that one as well. Then you are getting date of birth separately, month, day and year. Right, now first thing I want you to answer a small question. How many input functions you need to implement this program? How many input functions you need for this program?
Five.
So you need 5. Okay, so let me put yes, notepad. Okay, one question, how many inputs? How many inputs? One answer, 5. How many outputs?
One.
Okay, one output. How about the others? Are you in an agreement with this same answer? Nimesh, what do you think? To implement this program, how many input functions we need to use?
I think it's 2.
Yes, Rajit? What do you think? How many inputs and how many outputs?
Three inputs,
Okay, 3 inputs. Okay, we have another
one
answer.
out, one output.
One output. Okay, 3 inputs and 1 output. Sahan? Amila? Right, let's start. This is a little bit bigger program, right? So I'm going to use a script to do this because I'm going to iteratively I'm going to develop this, right? So because of that, let's start. So I'm going to get this shell and then I'm going to open a new file and I'm going to divide my screen into 2 parts so that one part I have the script, the other part I have the shell. Okay, like this. So maybe the other one, right? So like this. Okay, now first thing first, right? What we need to do is we want to first ask a person's first name, isn't it? Shall we start? So how do you do this? Yes? Right. The first one, we have to get the first name, right? So which means I have to use input and then whatever the message that we want to show to the user, we have to use enter your first name, right? That's all. And then I need to store this because at the end I'm going to display this. So I'm going to say okay. I'm going to let's say F name to indicate that this is the first name, and simply I can print F name. This is only 2 lines, but I'm going to iteratively develop this program. So I'm going to save it. I'm going to save, right? Desktop. We have the codes. Let me say program 2. This is my program 2. Let me run. I'm going to choose run module. Right, here is the output. It has the first name. Let me put Sampath, right, and it will display something. That's all. Right. So what is the next one? Second line, I have to get last name as well. That means again L name, last name. I'm going to get input. Okay, enter your last name. 2 things, so I'm going to just put L name here, right? Output. So let me run again, run module. I'm going to save it. It has the first name. Let me put Sampath. Then last name Digalla. Simply it says Sampath Digalla. How about the third line? Can one of you tell me like how can I print the third line? Yes, any ideas?
Print.
Yeah, it's a print, right? You don't have to take any input here. Simply just print. What you need to print? We will say okay, enter your date of birth. That's all. Right. So if I rerun it, this is how it look like. Right. I can have Sampath and then this last name. Then third line, enter your date of birth. Fourth line, yes, we can get month. I can have input file function. We can say enter sorry, month, right, and then you can say okay, month. Simply if I run it, right, we can have some path. You can enter your date of birth, month. I'm going to say August. Okay, that's all so far. So you can try. So why did you complete the remaining ones? How many more to go? 2 more to go. Get day and year, and then you should be able to identify. If you have finished the program, can you please raise your hand so I know that okay, you have finished. Adisha, have you finished? Right, let's continue. Right, so what should I do now? Let me see. We have to get 2 more to go. We need to get what? Day and year, and I am supposed to print this message, right? So I'm going back again. Right, so I want to get day. I can say okay, input, enter day and year. We can say year, right? So I think we have completed this month, day and year. So let me run this run module. Okay, so I'm going to say the first name, March 10, 1940. Partially correct, right? Because what we want to show is this one. I want to say Chuck Norris was born on March 10, 1940. So how do you change this? Any ideas?
Add the additional
Yes.
add the additional the last print.
Yes, you have to put. Now, for example, here I have actually printed only the variables, the values I'm getting, but instead of that I have to put was born on, I have to put a comma, I have to put a dot. Right, so let's update that. Now what we know here is we should we can put it here. We have to say okay, was born on. That's all right. Let me run again. We can say Chuck so now put comma and full stop. Right, those who have finished, I want you to raise your hands. So I see only 2, which means only 2 finished, right? If you want, you can have a comma like this. If you want, you can have the full stop like this. Right, but then again, if you run this, yes, we can have $19.40. Okay, there's a space. There's a space. Now simple solution would be you can just put plus here. Concatenation, because both are string values. You can have plus, which means you combine the two, because here is also a string value. The way we have taken it as a string value. So when you say plus and some other string, it will merge together. So I can type now. So we have this. On the other hand, you can have f string or the other two techniques. So what we should do is f, and we can put up as a string value. So the first one is, we can say it's f name, then L name. Formatting, you don't have to type it here, it's simply string. We can say was born on. We can have month, day, we have a comma, and year, within brackets, year, and then you have full stop. I hope that I have made no mistakes. So if that is the case, when you say run module, yes, I'm getting the same answer from both cases, right? You can try. There are other ways also. There are many ways that you can output the same one. So, but if you consider like how many inputs, you have only 5 input functions. How many outputs? You have 2. One is for the enter your date of birth, and the last one. Right, those who have finished, can you keep on raising your hands? The right now we have only 5 in the class. Adisha, Amila, Buddhika, Chintaka, Darshita, Danushika, Dulsha, Nimish, Pranavan. Right, okay, good. I hope now you got the idea. Can you quickly do this for me? The blue color indicates the outcomes. So you get the first number and the second number. Right? Then you actually sum it up these two numbers to get the answer. Right? Can you lower your hands, everyone, and finish this and let me know. Before you develop this third program, can you tell me like how many inputs or input functions you have to use and how many outputs?
Two input and one output.
Exactly. You need like two inputs for the first two lines and one output. If you have finished, please raise your hands. Right now, Rajit raising his hand. Hope he has finished this one. Rajit, finished? So let me take a new file. Right, let's start. I'm going to get two numbers. First number, its input, I can say okay, enter the first number. Second number, I can have another input, enter the second number. Right? So what we need to do is we have to add these two together, right? Summation. Okay, we need to put an answer here. So let me say total. So basically I add these two, I make it as a variable total, and then I will put that here. Right, let's me save. So this is program number 3. So let me run module. Let's say 10, 20. Okay, I'm getting some 10 plus 20 is 1020. What was the issue in my case?
You are not converting to integers.
Exactly. So it depends on you, like you have to decide whether you need a floating point number or an integer number. So in this case, I'm going to take it as an int. So first of all, when I'm getting the input, I should convert it to int format. You can use either int or float, that's okay. But here, for me, I have selected int. Now it should not give us any problems, right? We have but 28, then we have 15. Yes, the sum of 28 plus 15 equals 43, and here is my code. Okay, any questions from this part? Are you comfortable with this? Because we are not going to write programs like this. These are the only two programs we are going to write using idle. Because we are going to more focus on data analytics aspect, and we will use simple script instead of code like this. But I think you got the point here. Right, let's go back to the note. So we have written two simple Python programs to understand how input and output works. So especially we use input function. In default, it will take values as text or strings. But if you need a number, you have to use type converter functions like int or float. In second one, actually we have to convert the values into numbers because we are going to perform some calculations, right? To add these two together, make sure that you get these two numbers either as int value or float values. right? Otherwise you might not get the correct output. Okay, so next week we are going to start looking at the control structures. My assumption is, I assume that you have the basic programming background, like if, selections, loops, while and for loops. So things like that we are going to discuss in the next session. And under that we are going to look at the variable type, or another data type which we call Boolean. We know from the Boolean you have two sides or two values. That could be the true, false. Okay, so I think we'll finish for today, and then we'll continue with the next class or next session on control structures. So we'll be looking at how we will use Boolean type, and also like Boolean expressions, comparison operators, logical operators. And once you are ready with that, we are going to look at the selections, right? And then we will look at repetitions, right? Okay, so this is my plan for the next week, and I'll be sharing